Do I need to say everything I just said again? Okay. We're good. Do we have any citizens' comments to the board on agenda items this evening? No? Okay. Our first item is the continued discussion of the 25-26 budget.
Green, good. Before we get into the additional options that I prepared, thought we could talk a little bit about general fund budget, ins and outs, and what factors we can use to balance the budget. Looking at the top there, coming in revenues, main revenues, property taxes, earned income tax, basic ed funding, special ed funding, Title I. Most of our revenue is fixed in that we don't have a way to adjust it, except for our property taxes, obviously, which we can change, so are variable. So we have the option to adjust those property taxes to balance our budget if we need more revenue coming in. On the flip side, with expenses going out, a little bit different. Cyber, charter school, and things like our debt bond payments are more fixed in that they're exactly fixed, that we don't have an ability to adjust those even if we wanted to. And then things like salaries and benefits, contracted services, transportation, supplies and equipment, those types of expenses, we do have the ability to adjust if we absolutely needed to, but it would change the course of business in that we don't want to adjust those unless we're really, we really need to. We're going to change the course of business. So in that way, that those are fixed. And so the main factor that we have in expenses going out are the transfers to other funds, which we can use to balance the budget as well for the expense side. So yeah, we can go to the options now. So the options that, additional options that I've included have the two factors of the tax increase variable revenue and the capital projects transfer as the factor for expenses. The next slide, I also included the options from last week, but we'll start with these options as well. I have on here the Act 1 index just for reference. I don't think there's any desire to go to that, but it's here as reference. And then option B, we have a flat 3% increase. That would be a 414,000 transfer. You'll notice it's about 209,000 per 1% change. That's one way to think about it. There was a desire to see the consumer price index. For March, that was 2.4. So if we look at the 2.4% increase, option C, that would be a 288,000 transfer to capital projects. And then I have on there option D, no increase, 0%. Keeping all things equal on the expense side, that we would have a no transfer to capital projects, and we would still have a deficit of 214,000. And then we have the options from last week if we want to discuss those as well.
Any thoughts? We narrow down the range because you need a final number to prepare the final thing that we vote on.
Yeah, I would need a final suggestion to go with to bring to the next meeting in a proposed final. I have to prepare the actual budget in PDE and bring that to the meeting to approve.
Remind me, Kyle, remind me, where's our capital fund going to end after all of the projects we've approved? Is this it?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I don't know if you want to. We don't have a slide, right?
So it's the very bottom number,
yeah.
Just under $1 million.
Yeah, so, yeah, that's what you shared, right? Yep. Yeah, the 98 is the balance we have after all the projects to finish before we have the reimbursements from GDF and the facilities improvement grant and all that. After that, those reimbursements, our balance is just under $1,957,000.
Are all those reimbursements coming in the next year or are those like eventually?
They all vary
Yeah,
in
in time.
time,
Okay.
yeah. So the main reimbursement, which is the facilities grant, is sort of, as we are invoiced, we can invoice them to reimburse us. So it would probably be sort of I'm thinking 3 or 4 months lag, maybe 2 months optimistically from when we get payments going out to have payments coming back in. I think GDF is over.
Yeah.
We'll get 70, is it 70,000?
I think it's 78.
80,000 this, at the end of this year, and then the rest over 5.
I'll just comment, I guess. I mean, it seems to me like the option Bs on both slides are kind of a nice middle of the road kind of approach. I had asked the question last time because I wasn't familiar with like, how much do we normally put away in capital money? But if it seems like we have this balance, we need to be responsibly thinking about, needing money for projects that might come up in the future. We don't want that number to go too low. But these two option Bs with a 3 or a 2 or even a 2.95% tax increase seems like it still gets us in, close to what I'm taking away as the desired amount of capital projects balance, but still, keeps us either at or even slightly under a 3% tax increase. That seems to me to be like a pretty good compromise between those two things, but that's just my reaction.
We're all getting used to this. Do we have a ballpark number of like what we think we may be transferring this year from the budget to the capital funds?
You mean as a surplus?
Mm-hmm.
We don't have a ballpark yet.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a little too early.
But you're good to call to mind that we have been fortunate
To have stuff to
have that
transfer.
kind of money to be able
Right.
to transfer.
So historically, we always try to shoot for the lowest amount that we have to increase. The reason I asked about the CPI number was because I had seen the projected COLAs for next year, which I know we still have several months to go with they seem to be coming in that 2.1, 2.4, depending on which index you look at. And obviously that can change depending on all the unknowns, as well as what our surplus winds up being this year. But I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the last 2 years we have been, we've been surprised with our surplus. I can't remember the exact reasons, but one year it was a significant surprise. Maybe that's
The
2
ESSER
years.
money, 15 million,
that's right,
and then last year it was only like in the, I don't know.
1.64, and yeah,
Wait, what, 1.64 million last year?
Yes,
that's what we
Yeah.
transferred to capital projects.
And that came from, the state ended up giving us more than we had thought.
But that,
Because again,
as
doing this
well
all
as
for the state
increase in the assessed real estate value. John even reported more people paid their taxes. He attributed it to several good factors that
Yeah.
came together.
And I'm aware that this year, just like any year, we don't know what's gonna
Right.
happen. And there are question marks in everybody's mind that really isn't news, despite the fact that it seems like it in the news cycle nowadays, but it really is a fact of life every year. So I say all that only to say that also, if you look at our historical increases in this district and surrounding, we tend to be on the lower side. We tend to come in below at or below the index most of the time. There was one slideshow where we presented where we actually had the lowest of all of our surrounding districts as well.
Maybe we could quote
I
that.
say all that just to say that there are people in the community, not those that have children, but, you know, seniors and people that live on things like Social Security and all that. The only increase they're likely to see in their income this year is whatever the COLA increase is for next year. And I'm the first to recognize that, you know, a 2% increase or whatever, or even a 4% increase might only
Usually
be-
like $2.
might only be $150 or $200
Like
over
a
the
month.
course of a year. I get that, but every year we hear from people that indicate that that's a challenge for them. So I say all that just to say we spent $4.5 million this year on needed upgrades and things that we wanted and things that are good for the kids and the parents and the taxpayers who want to see those. There are also taxpayers that get no benefit whatsoever because they don't participate in the district. I shouldn't say they get no whatsoever. They do get a benefit. It's just not readily immediate. It's not immediately obvious. Maybe that's what I want to say. At any rate, I would advocate for something closer to that 2% range is where I feel, because I, even though it's just a gut, I still feel like we're probably going to wind up with a better transfer than that 200,000 number, just because that has been what's happening. And that lawsuit that happened that helped increase some of the state funding is still a matter of law, right? They still have to figure out how to give schools more money. We don't know what that's going to look like. I don't think they know what it's going to look like, but that's still out there and it's still a driving force. So
And we don't know yet if it will help us for next academic year, but hopefully soon, the reform on the cyber charter tuition will help us a lot, because it's a silly amount of money that it's more expensive than our own kids.
Are we expecting that to help us in this next year, though?
That's what I'm not sure of, right? If they passed it, would it not be in effect for the following academic year? Yeah.
we also have a nice safety balance in our fund balance, should we have some really unexpected shortcome, right? That would allow us to not have to put a building up for sale or something, so we have to go out for loans or whatever. We have some money. We do have a safety net. We've never had to dip into it, and hopefully we never will, but it exists nonetheless.
So I think you're leaning towards option C. But not this option C, the other option C.
I don't remember what it was, but yeah, it was something.
Yeah, 2.4, 2.45.
There was a,
No, I think you're
I'm-
looking at option B that was presented previously, right? The 1.97, because that's the 200,000.
of the numbers that are on the screen,
Yeah.
that's the one I like the best, but it, you know, we wanted to tweak that to a 2.1 or something like that. I mean, it all depends on whether you like a round percentage or a round dollar figure for a transfer, but it does. Realistically, whatever we speculate the dollar transfer on this is going to be, it'll wind up being something different, leaving it more or less.
I just want to check real quick what the projected employer cost index is for next year. That's the one that seems to be closer to what our actual expenditures are. Yeah, so that's 3%. Our actual, like, the index that tracks the types of costs that we have is an employer of majority people cost. It's tracking at 3 and higher. I realize that's not how people look at their actual costs, but it reflects our actual costs. So I'm referring to the Employment Cost Index, or ECI, which is a different index than the CPI. The type of employer that we are, the vast majority, 2/3 or more of our expenses are for salaries, benefits, just general people-related costs. And so that one tends to fall a little bit closer to what our actual increase in expenditures are for that portion of our budget. So that's just something to keep in mind, because we could see, again, next year, significant increases in healthcare costs, and then we would be potentially having to, catch up to that, or,
And if we don't benefit from the cyber charter reform, I did notice that the cost of that went up quite a bit. in the
yes,
past
that's,
couple of years.
that is a
If you don't have-
significant expense. What did we budget for next year, like 800,000, 1.2 million, something in that range?
For cyber, 1.1, I believe.
There any thoughts that we'll incur more from CSIU things because they're losing grant funding?
We have an agreement for our use costs for the coming year already, don't we?
Okay, those are all set.
Right.
And we could split the difference into the option C. Either one, 2.4, 2.45. And imagine that maybe we're taking a little bit of a loss, but acknowledging that our communities are gonna be hurting potentially.
Yeah, I'm comfortable at 2.4. If we go too low, we end up having to play catch up later on.
Right, then you don't wanna have to have like a 4% the
Mhm.
next year. More.
Mhm.
For the preparation for the next meeting is it's gonna float 2.4 as something people would be okay to see. What else would you like to see? You have to prepare one, so like we have to pick a number, but
Yeah.
is there,
Sounds like-
okay, pick a, okay, any number, one number.
I think Corey makes good points, even if the other index is really our cost, but if we're talking about, what people's cost of living is that coming down to try to be close to or at that percentage seems like a very strong rationale.
Mhm.
And having that as a round number, I think is probably more important than the capital projects being a round number. But, well, just since we don't know what that's gonna
Yeah.
end up
Yeah,
It's
shaking
gonna
up as
fluctuate no matter
anyway.
what, yep.
So I think that seems very reasonable to me. Yeah, I don't, I'm fearful of like oscillate, like putting it too low and then having to oscillate back up next year. So given the history, it seems like coming down to the 2.4 seems like a pretty safe, reasonable
Yeah.
option, but
I agree, like, I'd be comfortable with the 2.4, and I think right now, I mean, obviously, we're going through an economic issue and things are hard, and I think really trying to do things that would benefit the community by not having a larger tax increase would be beneficial.
Mhm.
My only concern is I just keep thinking about, like, we had seen, and not that I agree with the 2.4, I have no issues with that for this year, but just knowing that, again, like, we have been at places where we've looked at numbers of what was in our capital reserve because of tax increases over 10 years and then are stuck with trying to make up things at points because of that. So just knowing that like every year has been sort of a rough year, like since I've been on the board for the economy, and at some point we're still going to have to make up those funds. But I think that this is a good year to go with the lower amount. We did a ton of we did a lot of big projects that were sort of, I mean, they needed to be done, but they were also like fun projects too, like with the track and with things that weren't, the school was gonna fall down if we didn't do it. So I think this would be a good year project wise to do that, but just knowing that we've made these decisions before and then had to kind of deal the burden of doing higher increases with with the community because of that. And sometimes the community doesn't understand that point. So just to make that to be said. But I mean, I would agree with the 2.4 because I think that would be a benefit.
Yeah, I would just ask, so Vince, not to preview your presentation later, is there anything though from that like, facilities that we would be relevant to this conversation? As far as like, oh, actually, there's a lot coming up, like.
I mean, there's always gonna be projects. And that kind of just dictates how much you can get done in that given
Right.
year. But like the surplus the last year, I remember I was here, was a substantial amount, which allowed us to do the projects that I'm gonna be able to share about tonight. But yeah, I mean, there's always work to be done.
I don't like option B. Thank you for presenting that. If it's 214,000, that's it, obviously.
would just add that as much as I'd like to have some funds available, I think if you ask the taxpayer, they would say they'd rather have a smaller tax increase, even if we jump, if absolutely necessary, if we would need to go a little higher next year. There's so many unknowns that I hate to raise taxes more just in case of something that comes up next year. So I definitely would not want to go higher than 2.4, but I would love to see it a little closer. There's always, always the possibility of something happening, and we definitely have some safety nets in place. But again, to save more to have it in our savings account, essentially the savings account. I think taxpayers would rather have it in their account, possibly, essentially, the following year, but that's 10 years. Next year could be bad, next year could be bad years. But
Yeah,
I'd
and
rather leave it
thank you for the
taxpayers.
reminder. So, in our last presentation, our previous tax increases, in 2021, we went with 0, but then in 21, we voted on 2.94. You can tell that's a compromise number. 22, we voted on 2.75. 23 and 24, we went with 3.5% both of those years because inflation was so high. And we still end up, if we look at this number, balance before reimbursements doesn't matter very much. What matters more is how many things need to happen. But I hear what you're saying, how they, people can save and we can increase taxes in the following year if we need to, or we can always utilize some of our fund balance. Is
Do you
there,
cringe every time we say that? Do you actually- It's always
Yes.
when that
Yes.
Just a little.
yeah,
Sorry, adding
yeah,
some humor
no,
side
I
in
know, I
there.
completely, we all have that, like, no. So,
Yeah, I appreciate that history. I feel like, given that, to me, this is kind of going lower than we've been.
right, we're just matching inflation,
Mhm.
we're taking into account, we have contracts in place with increases that are set, right?
Mhm.
And our energy costs went up, our health insurance costs went up. PCERS, they keep promising, we're gonna asymptote at some point and stop having to pay more, and then what do we, it's not coming down,
No.
It was pretty comparable to the previous year,
right?
this year.
But in previous years, when we had the higher tax increases, so each of these things kind of creeping up and being a little bit more in percentage increase than the tax increase we're talking about. And I shudder to say it, but if we lose any more property off of the tax rolls without commensurate build elsewhere to increase property values, it, depending on the value of the property, the 2.4 effectively doesn't become that, right? Because we lost revenue.
I think
Nothing happens that fast.
If we can believe what we read in the newspaper, there may be an increase in tax revenue, right? The property that is that may no longer be tax exempt.
Oh, well, that's gonna spend some time flowing through the courts, right?
I don't know how that process works.
You know what, that
exactly.
will take as long as, cyber charter reform, so why don't we plan for those in the future year? They'll cancel each other out in the future year.
No, oh yeah, I was just gonna say, so I just want to, with Jordan, I just want to say, obviously, if something bad happens, we have money, but also just to be clear to the community too, our capital projects is for capital projects. So obviously, if a roof was gonna collapse, we're gonna fix it, but we do have a very full list of capital projects, and we have seen the price of those go up. So even though we have planned and said well, next year might be bad, yeah, we could afford everything, but everybody at this table is gonna say everything we build is much more expensive now than it was for 5 years ago. So knowing that this is our fund for projects and the cost of projects has continued to increase over the past 5 years. So just to be clear, if anybody reads this later, it's not just in case something happens, we have this other thing. If we know, we have to paint buildings still, we know we have to do all these things, and those things come out of the capital project. So some of those things have to be done. If we know we have to rewire the middle school, people dealt and it affected education of kids and teachers being able to do their jobs without being able to do that project. So just so that the community doesn't think like this is just the if, like these are also the plans, when you plan to do your roof, when you plan to, you know, waterproof your basement or those types of things, that's what the capital projects are for.
There's no question, if you look at our capital project list, there's probably still $10 million.
Oh, yeah, definitely. We ain't clearing any of those out any year with the, yeah, without a doubt. And like Vince said, there's always gonna be projects. We run facilities. There's always gonna be something that needs to be updated or maintained. But yeah,
And on that note, I do think we put some things that were valuable to all of us a bit to the side, didn't we? I mean, in Kelly, we wanted to kind of reconfigure the nursing area. If I'm not mistaken, we put aside some repaving or just kind of did like the piecemeal pothole fill.
Yeah.
So there are some.
Showers still.
Yes.
Horrendous, and I don't think they're gonna fix anytime.
right. And is really just a waste of space that we could use. So I mean, yeah, it goes on and on. So just to know, like, there are things and stuff. And for the community to know that there's stuff that maybe things they've been looking for in buildings that funding would come out of capital projects. So it's both ways on things that don't go forward because of not having the funding for it, because this is from our stream. So just so we're clear. But I'm very comfortable with 2.4 for this year.
It is the conversation we have every April.
Yep. Justin, are you a chance to chime in here?
I'm okay with 2.4.
Okay.
Sounds like 2.4 is a good compromise. Prepare that for next meeting.
Has Harrisburg passed the bus? No, they have not, right?
Oh,
I don't think we ever do.
No.
nowhere close.
We're better than that.
What's the latest they go
Yeah.
before it starts to actually impact us? Because we have plenty of revenue from taxes in August, but if they wait too long,
I think they've gone as late as August.
a whole year. Well, we'll just, yeah, not worth talking about. Okay. Next up, we have to take action on that. Do we just have to have an affirmative? No? Okay.
Just,
We're good, okay. We are taking action on the Lackawanna College proposal, and so this is the presentation we saw last week with some updates to the contract language. Do you want to add or share anything else?
I think we're ready to work with Lackawanna.
Do I hear a motion to approve? Moved by Dr. Mattis. Second by Ms. Kraus. Any discussion? I think this is fantastic. A great opportunity for our kids.
I think it's a great opportunity for our kids, and I really like it that it still keeps them here. That is becoming a problem to have it. All of the opportunities our kids have is wonderful. But it's hard to have, right, in talking about money, justifying a full-time teaching position for a class of just 6 kids.
Right.
Because so many kids are getting pulled in so many directions. And I know some of the surrounding districts, that's becoming quite an issue. So the idea that they're still here, they're still being taught by one of our teachers, I think is a huge plus to this program.
Absolutely. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Our next item is tuition student approvals. This is a student paying tuition to come attend our district. Do I hear a motion to approve? So moved. Moved by Ms. Kraus. Second by Dr. Gall. Any discussion? Okay.
Yes.
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 Our next item is our policies for first. reading. So if someone on the policy committee wants to sort of go through the minutes and discussion of these.
Thank you for the minutes, by the way. It was very
Yes,
helpful.
thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Heather or Kristen? If not, I'll gladly.
We'll let you do it.
All right, well,
You model for it.
you have one that we're ready to move through process, the simple one, change out reflecting our current comprehensive plan. We also used our committee meeting to discuss taking a look at the composition of policy committee, when we meet, how we proceed, looking to refine or possibly make some adjustments to some of that. We then began to tackle and must finish in time for the coming school year our acceptable use policy. This goes out annually through handbooks and to parents for signatures for our one-to-one devices and all the many ways that tech is part of our instructional program. There is a new template PSBA, but our own is very lengthy and full of things we have long thought were important. They're not set up in parallel fashion, so it's been a good discussion, but a true works in progress to edit and pull from our existing as well as the new pieces that have the citations, the legal court background. We need to be sure to protect ourselves, our students and families. We're halfway through, would you say? And we'll finish it with the coming meeting. Those were our discussion policies this most recent meeting.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So do I hear a motion to approve the changes to policy 101? Moved by Dr. Grant, second by Dr. Graham. Any discussion? It's just reflecting what we wrote in our new strategic plan. Okay. This is yes, sorry.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, we have some information about new scoreboard.
Yes, in your board docs, I'll just share the screen real quick as well. Second. There is a quote for 2 scoreboards, for 2 different fields. You have the junior high soccer, football and soccer field over by Lintown in the middle school, and a scoreboard as well at the field hockey turf field where the track is as well. There's a quote there for the boards themselves. That is a CoStarz quote. It's just a pre-bid quote. And then the one from CB Orange is a quote for installation of both of those boards. There is a sponsorship area on the scoreboard for junior highs, football and soccer. Potentially that could help offset the cost of both of these boards. We also had an area like that on the softball board that is going to be going in next week over at our softball field. Same company is doing these boards as well.
All right, does anybody have any questions about these? I don't have a board president's report this evening because the Green Dragon Foundation leadership meeting did not occur before Easter. You have a separate assistant superintendent's report for the evening?
I do.
Okay.
Just want to mention a couple updates. Today was our second day of PSSA state testing in 3 of our buildings. ELA the past 2 days, tomorrow as well. Next week is math and science in 5th grade and 8th grade. For science, it is the first year in 5th grade. And 5th and 8th grade will be online this year. We're testing that out as all testing for PSSAs is going to be online next year. So we're kind of piloting that in those grades. Our students are doing very well on that. Our students are prepared. So, and then we've got Keystones in mid-May as well. Some concerts coming up. The concert season is coming up. The first one is tomorrow at 7. And the art show, May 8th. That is the night of our board meeting. But again, the community can come out on May 8th to see all of our great art. And then last night, I got to go over to the venue in Danville to see our team of 10 8th grade students compete in the What's So Cool About Manufacturing contest. And it was cool to see portions of the videos from teams across the region. We were one of 8 teams we did not place, but again, good to see our contributions from our team that was there. So a few events going around, as well as just a busy season as we're going towards the end of the school year.
And we have a sort of update about the track, right?
Yes, track should be finished May 8th as the date that I've been given. So yeah, I believe this, you'll start seeing the green on the exchange zones probably this week or early next. So very soon to being completed for our track athletes to use for preparing for districts and states. And they're looking forward to being on that track. So.
Thank you. On to board liaison and committee reports. Anybody have anything that came up? No?
Suntech met last
Okay.
week, one of our shortest meetings, I think, ever, so, pretty standard meeting. The summer camp instructors were all approved. Next week, we're doing our second round of interviews, so.
Good luck.
Actually, I will mention, I even met, after this month, the family will be over here and we did have
The student from Suntech made the awards that were given out last night. It was so cool about manufacturing, and that was really neat.
They were
Something,
impressive.
a student designed it, but then multiple different student groups made them. Jordan, did you get a chance to see them?
I did not.
One was it was all done either laser or CNC router, so like a wood component, a cut metal portion. Something was 3D printed, a little robot on the
Yep,
front. and
That was a new ad, I think.
There
Yep.
were 4,
There's 4 different shops that were
Yeah.
involved. Yeah.
so that was pretty neat. We should ask about that, or maybe we have a sample there. I didn't take a picture because I didn't think about it until I was on my way home. Okay, so we are on to the consent agenda. Do I hear a motion to approve? Moved by Ms. Lyons, second by Ms. Pino. Anything need to be held out? I don't think so, right? Oh, it's here? Okay, where we go?
Dr. Grant? Yeah. Ms. Hanos? Yeah. Mr. Booth?
Yeah.
Dr. Jablonski?
Yes.
Mrs. Kraus?
Yeah.
Ms. Lyons? Yeah. Dr. Mattis?
Yeah.
Mr. Fetzer?
Yes.
Dr. Grant?
Yeah.
Motion carried.
And we always like to give thanks for the new GDF gift agreement. Do we have any, we don't have any other comments to the board tonight? Okay. Do we want to hold director's comments and just go straight into the committee of the whole? Okay, I'll take a motion to adjourn. Moved by Ms. Lyons, second by Dr. Grant. All in favor, say aye. Cool. We are adjourned for the regular part of the business meeting. We're moving on to the committee of the whole. Maybe think you're up first. Okay. How do you make the font bigger? Oh, it does, no.
Yes.
Oh, no, it disappears for a second. Good to go.
We're good?
Not big enough up there.
All right, so, comprehensive, plan update, goal number 4, just want to walk you.
I'm sorry, I didn't call us to order. I have to call to order this meeting of the committee. of the whole. There we go.
Perfect. Again, comprehensive plan update, goal number 4, just to remind you of our comp plan. We did these many months ago. We did, student learning was our first goal. We looked at student and staff safety and well-being. We switched gears and went to effective communication. Working with an intern right now on some social media projects, so some things to report on that pretty soon. At the last month meeting, we talked about inclusive practices, and today we're looking at enhancing infrastructure with the goal there of looking at our facilities, elementary and middle schools specifically, making sure we've got good spaces for our students to excel. And just going to walk you through some of those this evening. I did put at your place kind of a checklist that we've been using before. I have kind of a screen capture from that. But we're reviewing our building and facilities plan. It looked a little differently previously, and we kind of have been using this document the past few meetings, which tied well into objective number 3, which is talking about modernizing different spaces across the district: offices, health room suites, athletic facilities. And we've done a lot of that work this past summer and into this school year. And I'm going to give you updates of things that have happened this past school year and then things to consider for the future. So on the front of modernizing our district, I wanted to share some images across the district. One thing we did for athletic facilities is over at our softball field, is over by Pauling. We added a home run fence with some fence topper on there, and then some protective fence there by our bleachers on both sides to give you a visual of what that looks like. And then the scoreboard that I mentioned before is going to look like this. It was going to be installed today and tomorrow, but it got delayed till next week. So that should be up very soon at the softball field. As I mentioned, there is a spot there for a sponsor. So if anyone watching at home wants to sponsor a scoreboard, your advertisement could be right on that board at the softball field.
Well, that one's already signed. Softball, right?
Not yet. It is currently available to be sponsored. We have someone that is considering it, but not sponsored quite yet.
Okay.
We mentioned tonight as well about the track. These are some shots from yesterday. There was like 3 layers that are involved with putting a track on. This is them seal coating that first layer. So it's kind of that second layer. And so very soon, I think we're looking at May 9th as a finish date for students to be on that and utilizing that and our turf being used again at that point. Again, we're making progress. If you drive by, you'll see all the different pieces of equipment that are there, as well as all of the supplies. So looking forward for that to be done. Again, our turf field was done over the summer and in the fall. Yep, Mr. Wetzel actually shared a picture today from a neighboring district where some signage for that field on some rules and regulations for entering onto the track and things like that. So we want to work on that in the very near future to have a similar sign. Milton has one similar, which is where our kids have been practicing in their interim. Another project that happened over multiple different months as the middle school got an exterior cleaning. They finished that over this last break. Just a couple of pictures that kind of just show a nice clean building. Again, it took them some time in the fall as well as over our spring break to get that done. And I thought the back looked very nice and clean. I have some additional pictures on my phone of some before and afters, which are nice. You kind of see how that actually looked. So good to see that happen as an ongoing project. Also over the spring break, our painters came back to do some more additional brick cleaning. And all of these uppers above all these lockers on this other kind of hallway to the right when you go into the middle school, all were repainted, as well as the brick. You can see it kind of has been sealed. Has a nice gloss to it, easy for cleaning. Just years of students, touching that brick and many, many years. And again, just bringing life to that, again, rejuvenating the spaces. And as well as the cafeteria, there were murals in there and the things that were behind the murals, all of that brick cleaned and painted as well. Next week, we have some signage, going to be being put up, around the high school, directional signs that we're calling them. So on the road itself, right out here, there's going to be a sign, this taller sign will be on both directions, kind of telling you which entrance to go into. Twice in the last 2 weeks, just walking around the athletic facilities, I've ran into a parent or a visiting team that they weren't sure how to get back to our turf field. So this is going to direct them around the building to the athletic fields. And those are going to look very, very nice as well. There'll be one right in the front here, kind of directing them to the right to go around. And then there'll be one in this far corner, as well as, how to exit over there by the new parking lot. You can see where they're going to be. There are some sign markers there right now if you do drive around the building in the next week or so. They should be up very soon. Also, through our PCCD grant, we were able to purchase a lot of cameras, 43 360 cameras, as well as 34 exterior or interior cameras that look like the picture there, as well as 8 dome cameras, all from that grant, as well as we're about taking care of like 10 additional doors and adding fobs to those that did not currently have them in 3 of our buildings. And so the PCCD grant funded that project, and that is pretty much to completion as far as the camera side. The fob project will be happening next week, probably the next 2 weeks, making sure those doors are also taken care of. And again, any questions you have, like Justin did, please share them as we're going here. I can always come back to a slide as well. This past summer, we installed this copy room, and I wanted to give this visual for a later project. This is in the vestibule when you go into, or the foyer, I should say, some space that was kind of not utilized well and now has a very good purpose for our teachers. And this week, our new copier, Elise copier, was put in there for our teachers to use. And there's been a lot less emails about that copier there. So,
Kristen, I see you checking that out. Turn right around and you're like, yeah, you know how much that's needed.
So that has been installed, and wanted to share, again, remember that visual there for that copy room as I get to a slide in a little bit. Some summer projects, we talked about this even tonight, the roof project should start right after school. The areas in green were done last summer, and what was approved, majority of that was going to be grant covered, is the areas in yellow. I believe June 9th is the date of start. Thank you. And then a couple areas in red that could be done, in a phase 3 project down the road. Other projects that were already approved. We talked about this, I think, at the last meeting. At the middle school, some abatement and some flooring. I believe it's 3 classrooms. That'll happen as well in the month of June. Kelly Playground resurfacing in line with the court getting resurfaced with some poured in place. The asphalt as well is going to be resurfaced. And then we've mentioned this before, but the lighting and sound project, GDF had a good campaign that raised lots of funds for that. That should happen in late summer or early fall. Again, to add some additional use on our turf field. And then some projects under consideration. Some of these also are on that document that I gave you. We want to create an additional classroom in the middle school library. You guys have all been there, but when you walk into the library, to your immediate right, there is an area that had stored a lot of costumes. And by adding a wall and a door, we can make that into not a full-size classroom, but a very medium-sized classroom that can be utilized for various purposes. And so hoping to find a spot to do that this summer potentially, or again, when funds are available.
What are the costumes?
What's that?
I have an idea.
We have possible solutions for that. Removing lockers and putting in some storage. In the stage area, there is a closet that could be a potential space. There's another area that we have identified that could also be a closet. So there's 3 or 4 different things that we're throwing around at this point. We're planning on kind of pulling out some lockers to kind of see how deep the cavity is in that wall along that library wall too. So lots of different options that we're considering. No decision was made kind of on that quite yet. We could do that.
Small shed, I just think, I mean, it's like a closet.
If you go, you actually showed a picture of the hallway where all the lockers are that aren't utilized, right?
Yes, that was that hallway. Yep,
Yeah.
yep. So in the middle school foyer, there's a vestibule when you walk in, an entrance vestibule where parents would come in or visitors would come in. We're hoping that we can extend that further into the foyer. So there could be an exchange window to the admin assistants as well as, so they don't have to walk into the office itself. So by extending that slightly, we'll be able to put a window on that brick wall, as well as a small office for our police officer. Could also happen right there. So you would kind of extend the entrance vestibule from where it currently is further in, and it would look kind of like that copy room. It would have that same look and feel that I mentioned
All the way where the
diagonally.
booth is, right? Just go over
Yes.
where the booth, that makes a lot of sense.
Yep. And that booth wouldn't be there anymore, but yeah, that would be exactly the distance you're going to go. Yep.
And then the exchange window would be like what they have at Kelly.
Yep, very similar.
That's what
Yep.
happens there.
We actually looked at a catalog that just did exchange windows. Kathy and I
Yes.
went to the contractor. I didn't know they made such a catalog, but it exists. But again, different levels of that glass and how it looks. So we were reviewing that this week as well. Yep.
The school was built for like 150 more kids than it holds.
Yeah, it's mainly that hallway to the right by the library is the lockers that we're referring to. The lockers we use typically are the other hallways, the other three hallways. I mentioned that one. Kelly Elementary, we talked about this in the past. Our classrooms, the carpet there is dated. It's been there a very long time. It's kind of lived its life expectancy. And so we're looking at, what cost would be to replace the carpeting in some classrooms, all classrooms. So it's just something on the table. We don't really have a cost for what that would be yet. We talked to one vendor so far just to get a rough idea, and looking at square footage and how much could be tackled. But that's something to consider down the road. Roadway lighting at the parking lot back here, kind of the road going out. We have stanchions in place. We decided at one point not to do that quite yet and potentially use a future PCCD grant because it has connections to safety. And also over at Kelly, the parking lot lights there are probably close to end of life as well, and could consider replacing those kind of similarly in the grant if possible. Some of our new facilities, like the football and soccer field at the middle school, are going to need some bleachers, and making accessible bleachers that have hand railings would be a benefit. And we found a vendor that could work with us on that. So again, that might be something that you might come see in the near future. Our softball bleachers as well are somewhat dated and again, don't have some of the handrails that would be helpful for our older population to be at those games. So considering accessible bleachers, and the locker rooms are on this list. So again, if money's available, that would be a great project to tackle. There's actually three pieces of that. There's the athletic training room for middle school at a much smaller price tag. You could renovate and rejuvenate that space with new flooring and paint and cabinetry. The locker rooms is a much bigger project. There's two very large locker rooms with some additional offices that are in there and some other spaces. And then a fitness lab, there's some storage there that we could convert into some kind of fitness space for middle school phys ed. But any other questions on some of those potential projects? And again, we have other lists with even more of the projects on there that we could talk about, but these are some of the ones that are potentially higher on the list.
What puts the middle school locker rooms higher on the list than the Kelly nursing suite?
I would say they're pretty much at the same level. Again, funds available. Yeah, again, that's some moving walls and things like that. There's flooring, there's, setting it up differently potentially, because there's a lot of just kind of weird wasted space there too, with that kind of central office that's right in the middle of it.
Yeah.
So it's not set up real well, but again, there's this added cost that for both of those, that's why they're kind of lower on this list, because they're just bigger items.
Have we ever done a survey of all staff just to sort of crowdsource ideas for things that we may be overlooking? So, I will give the example of when there is something going on. I don't want to do another sports thing, I understand, but I just want to tell you that we have all these signs that say no parking at Pauling along the road and whatever. It's because people truly, I believe, cannot figure out how to get from the parking lot that's between Lintown and the middle school along the Dragon Path over there. And so maybe some additional signage or wayfinding. That's something that I just noticed from like the few times I've seen that happen. So I'm sure staff is in there every day and they're like, oh, you know what always happens? And they've just found a way to live with it, but it's probably awful. So I don't know if there's something you want to just put it out and say, hey, it's the end of the year, or maybe when people are moving into the classrooms, maybe in years, you don't have any money until then, just say what you notice, right, that could really use an improvement. Because I bet we would have heard about a copier room by 100 people, you know, by the time we decided to do it, right?
Yeah, I mean, Kathy and I are on all of the email chains, so we see the things that come up. For example, another project I'll mention later, but the middle school rewiring project, there was emails constantly about the network being down, and frustrated staff, and you don't see that at all this year. Like, you rarely see that. And 2 weeks ago, before the copier was installed, there was lots of emails about this copier is down very often. So they were.
Ticketing system, are we still using that ticketing?
We are. The ticketing system as well is another place where we can see different things. And if they're seeing a maintenance issue that's needed, they're putting in a ticket. But I'm just saying kind of the gripe of just, it's down again. That's not really a ticket. It's just a frustration. They're calling they're calling Marco to come fix it, but they're just kind of alerting everybody that it's down right this moment.
They're just sending it out to the staff to let them know.
Yeah.
Yeah, Kristen was very involved with putting out those alerts previously at the middle school. So,
Turn around to check out the next one.
And what
Other
about
thoughts?
the shift for the potentially moving the hallway back for central office, or moving it forward? I forget what the plan was.
Yep,
Is that-
still on the table as well. How do we potentially move the business office portion closer to the front of the building is still a potential project too. We have some other steps to go through before that would take action, but I think over the summer that we could see that happening at pretty minimal cost. Other thoughts, questions on this slide? Enhancing existing buildings through thoughtful planning and resource allocation. Where are we getting some of those funds? One of those sources that we talked about tonight is the capital fund. And the transfer helps to have some money available to do those projects. We also have a lot of grants that we have been awarded recently. So PCCD grant, it comes out every year. I think it's usually say April, but I think if we get it until we completed, it's usually like September. Public school facility improvement grant, Kathy worked on that for a roofing grant. And then USDA, we found out about this through GDF. They mentioned that USDA would be a good potential partner, and they have granted us $60,000 to go towards potential tennis lights. The project is more than that, so we're looking to see how we could potentially fund that with additional grant funding. Part of that grant is to have community use is definitely tied to that, and some events like a Red Ball event in May for getting people excited about tennis, beginners getting into tennis, and some of our tennis coaches could be a part of that, having some things in the summer. But community use was a very big part of that, and potentially a project for the committee, the community engagement committee, is looking at community use, as we mentioned before. Also, Green Dragon Foundation has been a great partner for additional funds. That icing, the Fire Up the Lights campaign, helped those lights to take place. There are also a lot of windscreens that are up at the turf field that helped for those lights as well. And those windscreens can be purchased really for any of our fields. I mentioned the scoreboard has a spot on 2 of the scoreboards for sponsorship, and then gift agreements that we approved a couple tonight are also things coming in to help offset those costs. One of the objectives on there was to just look at the idea, kind of an older idea of could we add additional space in between Lintown and middle school? Again, with other things that are on the table and on this list, this is kind of not top of mind right now. But again, I thought if there could be an additional auditorium and additional classrooms, that could be an ideal location for that. So that's on here as well. I mentioned technology a little bit before. How do we improve our technology infrastructure? This past summer, using half of it was funded by an E-rate grant. The whole middle school was rewired. We're currently reviewing our device replacement plan and just comparing different kinds of devices and making sure we're getting the best bang for our buck. I mentioned in executive session about some of these upgrades that you're seeing tonight. Our projector, a new projector in this space, and utilizing the older one that was in here over at the middle school library, using microphones that we've already had and making them functioning again, the camera, making it functional for this meeting and for these meetings twice a month. All the cameras that I mentioned before, bringing them into our software. And then one thing I didn't add on here is over the summer, we're planning on looking at two-factor authentication for security. A lot of our vendors are kind of requiring that of us. And so Jeremy is in the process of testing out some additional two-factor companies, and potentially there will be an app on people's phones, or they will get an email to do two-factor authentication as opposed to a text message. And then some partnerships were another objective. How do we find different organizations that can help offset costs or that we can both mutually benefit? And so I just identified a couple of those. Again, I mentioned Green Dragon Foundation earlier. Our PSA has been a great partner as well. They take care of some field trips as well. We have, again, an elementary and a middle school PSA, as well as events at the end of the year. They help cover those costs, some of those costs. Geisinger and WellSpan have been good partners, either with donations or with programming. WellSpan has been a good partner for us for our wellness committee and doing wellness challenges this school year. It's been good working with the community wellness person, Alyssa, this school year. We've got multiple university and college agreements. We approved the Lackawanna tonight. We have students that go to Bucknell, the Commonwealth with the ACE program, or the early college program now. They have been good partners as well. And then I mentioned before, Community Engagement Committee is looking at different ways to partner with additional people to bring to the table for that purpose. Other questions? That is all of the objectives.
My thanks to Vince to capture it with the pictures, and we have spent time on all 5 goals embedded into our current comprehensive plan.
Thank you.
Is there another foyer or vestibule or whatever at the end of the middle school hallway?
Sure is.
What did you talk, what was the potential for that space?
There's ideas there,
those-
potential storage
Right,
for costumes.
Oh, the other foyer, yes.
yeah,
Yes.
the far foyer,
Yes, I was thinking the one in the back, but yeah, the one on the right, yes.
yeah.
The related arts teachers make use of it instructionally.
Oh, okay.
They go out of Mrs. Tidy's room to work music projects. They go out with their art projects, but we don't enter and exit there. And there's possibilities again to rethink how we could use that area. And so we look often and talk.
Try to capture
often.
nooks and crannies, yep.
Are there any types of class? So when you talk about the small classroom in the middle school library, what's the immediate need?
Seminar style.
Okay,
Gifted population is small group typically, small table discussions. Again, opportunities to take a group of 6, 8, 12 students and sit down and work collaboratively. And the biggest impediment is the robust amount of costuming, but they're valued to theater, to the classroom teachers. Miss Pauling tells me always about how much youth they get. So where and how to have them best kept but accessible is the challenge.
Do we have enough space in this building for the students who want to take advantage, for example, of a lack of an online course because we're not offering it in the building? Do we still have the little breakout rooms at the end of the halls that are,
Flex rooms exist,
are they schedulable?
both floors, down in both academic hallways.
Do we have any students right now who do online classes in some of these spaces for e-school, if they're supplementing with something?
They are in regular classrooms accessing now. They're in the special education classrooms. They're in the study halls because they are singular students taking their courses. Other good question. Anything Vince could show again or share in more detail? He could have made 3 more slides, your bullet points that you saw, but you raised good questions asking about even more projects that we've been talking about. That's the continuous prioritization work that I feel we spend a fair amount of time, effort, and discussion to try to continue deciding what's the most important, needed, necessary, wanted. I'd like your idea. Have we asked everyone who has a stake in it for their thought and perhaps need to seek out staff input?
Oh, I would think, I don't know, just my, personal background with the middle school lockers and we stand it out. Those are just such a, I like that locker room.
It is so bad.
It just feels like, I'm like, yeah, I mean, it's anything we can do anywhere in that building. I know, having now a 9th grader and a 6th grader, the common theme is like, I feel like I'm in like a 1970s, like after school special, like you they just feel like they're like, and it's the environment. I mean, I'm not somebody who thinks you have to have the fanciest, newest, all that stuff, but your learning environment does matter. And so I think if we can clean the wall, scrub the brick, and we know structurally there's nothing wrong with that building, and that's wonderful. That saves us a ton of money, but we do need to make sure that it is a comfortable environment to learn in.
Yeah.
And teach in and all of that.
Yeah.
I know that we changed the bulb, the light bulb.
So we've moved to LED, we've lightened and brightened both with the ceiling tile and with the lighting in that effort to.
And then having
kind of-
blinds, right?
Not
Not yet. Oh, still no new blinds?
Still on my.
Still on I know, I'm shooting that tonight.
One thing, what we used to do is we used to look at these like big expenditures that we knew we would do every so often, like band uniforms are like once every 7 years or something like that. And we would do our devices once every 4 or 5. We're looking at Chromebooks and other things. That's what we're in consideration for right now.
Right.
Yeah,
So-
and we purchase devices every year. It's part of our process.
But something that, and we sort of have the turf field out there for replacement, and we always know about the basketball courts and stage resurfacing and whatever, but like at some point, a lot of things are gonna come up, right? Like at some point, do those trailers just fall off of Kelly? And at some point, are all the chairs in the auditorium worn out? And we don't depreciate, that's not part of our budgeting model, but some businesses do. But if we could just keep, on some far out there, and I know we do 5 and 10 year planning, but to say, you know what, there's gonna be a huge hiccup of expenses the year that every single auditorium chair is broken, and it's probably 17 years from now. But given how ugly a lot of things are, I feel like we have 17 years of things to do, and then we're gonna have to make space for that. But just in the budget, holding space for, we know we need to do this. Like, what year are we on with band uniforms? It's like $1 million, right? It's something wild.
Not quite that much, but yeah, they're pricey. It is on our other document. We know it, when it would be due. But finding a kind of a document that kind of keeps that is a good point, and something we can also do.
Were they like $300 an outfit or something? Oh, okay.
I mean, maybe we could find
There's obviously things that none of us would think of off the top of our head. It's just like the places I think about that I visit, you know, at some point they're gonna wear out. The old high school?
Now that we know you know how to do it.
So Corey knocks down Bird's Nest and Squirrel Park every year at Kelly, and you can be on log volunteer. Gotta be careful what you.
I'll volunteer that I do not do asbestos abatement. Okay, any other? I don't see any citizens' comments, so, unless does anyone have any final last words for, since we didn't do director's comments? All right, I can take a motion to adjourn, although I feel like I'm forgetting something, but motion to adjourn? Moved by Dr. Mattis. Second by Dr. Grant. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All right, we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.